Hello. Welcome back to TSC Talks, the podcast inspired by the condition known as tuberous sclerosis complex. My name is Jill Woodworth, and I am your host. I'm going to turn that music down and tell you what's coming up on the podcast. My next guest is Katherine Caulfield. She is the owner, founder of Quantum Freedom. I'm going to read you a little bit about what Quantum Freedom is. It is an experience. It's a platform, a portal, where one can begin to get glimpses of life beyond the confines of time and space. It's a sacred space offering you an invitation to know and heal yourself, releasing any mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual limitations that may have been holding you back. So, offerings, she offers channelings, she offers quantum healings, she offers activations. I know she does some tarot. So she considers herself a mystic, spiritual guide. I crossed paths with her through one of my other podcast guests, Dorina Leslie, who was on very early in the podcast, has a son with TSC, also who was on, Justin Leslie, great family, and she gave me a gift for my birthday, a reading with Katy, which really threw me out of my comfort zone completely. And Katy, I don't know whether you knew that. Yeah, coming from this really conservative background, even though I haven't been really immersed in that for many years, and I'm not knocking it, but for me to go do what might be considered dark side or something through like the fundamental, very black and white way of understanding how you access spirituality. But still, I'd never gotten one, so this was my first psychic mystic experience, and she was completely different than I expected. There was really a lot of very therapeutic process. I ended up helping me tremendously move through some issues that I'd been struggling with, that it was really unexpected how helpful it was. And part of the reason that I wanted to have Katy on, just being a parent that's dealt with some chronic, ongoing stressors, and I think we all have right about now, looking for ways to get a different perception, different input, and different types of healing. I thought putting out this type of practitioner might be helpful to you, special needs parents, TSC parents, anybody in the audience, anybody anywhere, I think could get something from it. And I think, some of it you bring to the experience what you have where you are, so it's not necessary to prepare in a way that is asking you to do something that you don't feel comfortable doing. So I appreciate that with Katy. So yeah, she's awesome. I'm going to let her talk in just a minute. I want to just mention we're doing our TSC Talks weekly updates every Wednesday at 3 p.m. on Facebook, and those are live. And the first two, I had Chris Nichols join me. I think he did the first one, who is one of our partners on TSC Talks, and this week I had Lisa stop in. I am going to try to jazz up my monologues and have some more people pop in, and if anyone wants to give a shout out for a birthday or something they want the community to know about, the Cannabis community that listens, or the TSC or special needs or friends or family, let me know. Birthdays, concerns, prayer requests, whatever. I'll put it out there. I'll shout it out. So check those out Wednesdays, and we'll try to get the videos up on YouTube. As well, after this podcast, I think we're going to drop TSC and COVID convo. For all of you waiting to hear that, Daniel Price is the host, and then after that is Sarah Hope, who is a microdose coach, microdosing psychedelics healer also, and she is in Colorado. She is up. So got some great stuff coming up. Keep tuning in, and thanks again, Katy. Take it away. Thank you, Katy, for being on TSC Talks. I bumped into you through our mutual friend, Dorina Leslie. Hi, Dorina. She bought a reading for me for my birthday I think it was 2019. And I'd never had anything done like that in my life. I grew up in a very conservative Christianity where that was considered like anything occult or anything different. Yeah, so I was kind of had this, but I didn't have, I kind of evolved to the point where I knew that there was more than just this one way of seeing things, but I hadn't really explored that until I had the reading with you. And, I'm in my 50s, so And it was a really great experience, I'll tell you that. So why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself and wherever you want to start. I did read about your that you had an awakening, so I don't know if you want to talk about that too. So you could,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would love to talk about that. So yeah, let's see, where do I start? I would say it almost goes back to my grandmother. So
Okay.
I was named after her, Catherine, Katy, and
Mm-hmm.
she was a psychic. And so she did these readings. So I grew up with this, thinking it was normal,
Wow.
thinking it was normal.
Right.
Yeah,
right. Well, now, would she have people come to your house, or how did you know that's what she did?
It was just
or,
so
like,
integrated in my upbringing. Yeah, she would do readings. She had such a loving circle of people who respected her and got assistance from her, guidance. She would do phone readings like I do, or in person. As I was getting older, I would ask her for questions, like as a high schooler, and she would be just spot on with helping me out.
Oh,
yeah,
how cool.
She was just amazing. She also channeled a book, actually. She had told me that I had this gift, and she had received that from a young age, but of course you have to kind of grow into that. So
So you knew that
I did. Like I think I'd always been on some level aware from a young age. Like I had an imaginary friend that I spoke to, which was probably more of like an angel. Yeah, but I didn't really step into it until into my 20s. So
okay.
And it was really like after she passed, and who knows how that all works, but she's definitely supporting me on the other side as well. So
I am sure of that.
Yes. So yeah, and then in 2013 is when like I started getting interested in it. Maybe like 2009 is like start intellectually, but then 2013 was when I really, as far as I know, I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening.
That sounds
it was
intense. That's the only word I had for it.
It was very intense, very intense. It totally rocked my world. It was like, there was no control. Like there's no way that I could have changed it or like directed it. It was totally coming from a higher place. And the only I experienced a lot, and I can go into that, but like very, very highs and then really low lows. So very transformative. But when it first happened and really throughout and since then, I would say the only way I could describe it was like a full embodiment receiving of grace, like divine grace, like that. And it was the first time I'd ever experienced that. I also feel like it was the first time I really accessed my own soul and just my true self, my divine self. So it was very intense, very powerful. And it lasted, I would say, almost that whole year. It happened in early February. And I would say started to settle by like July, August, but it was really a long time of these experiences.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot. I guess, I think of, an awakening, and I can relate in some ways as being more of an intense, short-lived thing, but reflected on my own history, I had a out-of-body experience that was really intense. And, I think it's taken me a long time to integrate that, but, it was a short-lived, intense experience, but, yeah. So hearing that over that period of time, that must have been really, really hard. I guess good and bad. So, so you had the family connection with your grandmother, and then how did you decide to go into, I hate to say go into business, or was it just a natural progression?
So after that experience, that really catapulted me really deep into this. So I basically had to, find help for what I was going through. It was really challenging.
Yeah.
So I actually went to Boulder, Colorado. And I was really blessed to have a friend of a friend offer me a scholarship to a psychic energy school there, where I could learn. At that point, it was like almost like vital for me to learn energy management and how to ground and how to clear my energy, because I was experiencing all of this psychic stuff and I had no basis, you know, for what to do with it. So I went there that year and learned really important, you know, how to heal myself, and then I started to learn how to read for others as well at that school. And then a few years later, I'll just like, you know, fast forward 2 years.
Sure.
2015, so it was 5 years ago, was when I received my first contact from the Spirit Collective. So, and it was, I was just explaining this the other day to someone. It was like I was sitting at my kitchen table very casually, you know, and it was all of a sudden I felt very visceral presence up into my left, like, yeah, directly to the upper left of me. And it basically felt like somebody dropped like an energy or a thought into my head from there. And weird. It was like, it wasn't like someone was whispering in my ear. Like I didn't hear it in the way that we hear, but it's like a receiving and knowing. And they said, we have a book for you. We have,
no way. That is
we've got
so
a book if you
wild.
We got a full book if you wanna start. And like I think for maybe the average person that would have been a lot more shocking. But again, like my grandmother channeled the book. I was interested in it. I knew all of this existed. Yeah. So I was a little like, okay, you know, I didn't know who it was or what, but then it kind of unfolded. And in 3 days after that, I was just typed it, that whole book that you read, Divine Embodiment, right there at my kitchen table. And I channeled it through typing. So it all just kind of, and then after it was done, I would say is when I started to be like, okay, who are you? Like where are you coming from? And understand more about the source and what information I was getting.
Yeah, it's hard for me to, I can't understand it completely, and that's okay. That's why there's people that have this, have tuned into this. And, you know, I guess, could you just give me a little bit of like terminology? Like, how do you define yourself? And, you know, you said, I think just for people that aren't that aware of these practices, like channeling, what that means, and just some terms so we can.
For sure, yeah. Okay. I spoke to you earlier, and I still do stick with almost like, I don't want to say stick with because there's a lot, but mystic. I love the term mystic.
I like that.
I like that term because it is very all-encompassing, and I don't feel like it's been overused.
It doesn't have the negative connotation that a lot of other terminology has.
Yeah, and there's a lot more like fluidity in that term. So I like that. I definitely, it's so funny. I just received confirmation like yesterday that, you know, part of my soul contract, part of me being here is to be a healer. Like I agreed to come here to heal myself and others and learn and teach other people how to heal themselves. So I would say healer is part of it. But then, you know, you could throw in as many words as you want. I definitely like astrologer. I do that pretty heavily. And, you know, author, writer, of course, channeler. So channeler or channel is basically just opening myself to loving, benevolent, higher energies, frequencies of wisdom, really. Just higher wisdom that we as humans just don't have access to on our own. So that's how I would describe channeling, is just we're already vessels for source and for that energy, but it's like really consciously saying, okay, you know, I want to bring through whatever you have for me, whatever is needed at this time, kind of thing. So I do channeled messages, I do soul readings for people and channel information for their highest good.
So like, it seems to me like, and, you know, I think everybody wants to define things, you know, and so they can put them in their box, and me included. I think to me, it sounds like a spiritual, like guide or coach almost.
That's another,
you know? So
I always forget about that,
it's beautiful. Because you encompass a lot of practices into, you know, one kind of business or services that you provide.
Yeah,
so
good call. I'm start using that now.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm doing this segment. Part of the podcast is, you know, alternative medicine or alternative practices, just because I feel like I walk, part of our audience are parents, people with conditions that are really demanding, where they're existing in cycles of traumatic experiences, and not a lot of time and energy to get into like a formal therapeutic practice. Not that people should make time for it, but just giving some other ways of exploring our connection and our understanding of our situations. I know that was helpful for me to put it into perspective, in this lifetime. And, like you said right away, like everybody, it's our soul has a purpose, or we're here for a certain reason. And for me to understand that, as a parent of children with special needs and challenges, that meant a lot, because I think we're looking for meaning, and we're looking for ways to move the needle forward, and we feel helpless a lot of times. So I love what, you do. And yeah, so that was my riff.
Cool.
Right. I guess, so you went to this college and or this school, and you got the training. What types, how do you get business? What's your clientele like? And some of the challenges that you have, I guess, give us a picture of like what it's like to do
what I do. Yeah. So the first question was, you said, what are my clients like, right?
Yeah. Like what, I guess I'm trying to get like, what's it like?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's, okay. Like? Yeah. So it's, to be honest, I don't do a lot of like formal advertising or marketing. It's very word of mouth. It's very kind of like organic business, I guess I would say. Like people find me and vice versa. And it's like, I think we're drawn into each other's orbits for certain reasons, divine reasons. And that's how a lot of it kind of comes to be. Friends of friends, like some of my clients I've never even met in person. Well, like you, and a lot of them actually, like I have a lot of now in California and just different places that, I and it's amazing because I develop a lot of really strong bonds and some really close friendships, like with some people that I work with. Yeah. So, and a lot of times it just kind of spreads like that. Okay. So someone has an amazing experience and then they tell their other friends that are interested, and that it kind of snowballs. And in terms of like the challenges and yeah, I don't know. I mean, it hasn't been like, I guess for me, it's just like, there's two things. So like, I'm always second guessing, should I be doing more or like differently? Because I let it like just kind of flow a lot. And I think that's worked out a lot, but I'm always like, what else could I do? And then the other part is that I found that my business at Quantum Freedom, which is the book series and my services, is very quickly evolving. I mean, it's pretty young, like really 2016. So it's about 4 years old, and I don't know if it's like because our world right now is evolving so quickly and transforming and like it's kind of all in tandem and I'm growing and transforming, but I feel all these directions for the business that I'm pulled in beyond what I'm already doing. So it's like, there is a core, but there's so many directions that I feel like it could turn into a future. Wow. Yeah. It's just, like, for example, like a mystery school or like a healing arts school, creating documentaries based on the books, like all of these things that I'm really getting the message like, okay, these could be possibilities or just different ways. Like I know we're dealing with a whole pandemic now, but hopefully beyond that, when things start to normalize, like I really feel so called to community and to creating community, and somehow like, just because I see how valuable some of the things I'm offering can be, like to it's kind of a virtual community now, but I would love to see it more in person, like hands-on. I definitely would love that in the future. So it feels like it's moving in that direction. So I guess just trying to keep my pulse on, the timing of things and how much to let it evolve and working with the momentum that's already there.
What do you have to offer to someone like that hasn't had an experience or isn't familiar with this type of practice and is a little, maybe not even skeptical, but just how do you like bring people in, or how can you talk a little bit about that?
It's basically like what I would explain to someone is I don't like the word belief even, but I'll use it now. But my
Here you
belief is that any condition or experience or challenge that we face in this realm, in the physical, always has its roots in the spiritual realm, in the energy levels. So there's progressively dense to subtle energy, layers and layers and layers, and they go up. The farther up you go, the more free and clear and refined and light and true and loving they are. But as we get denser and denser into these forms, the issues that can crop up, I do believe they always have like a mental root or an emotional root or spiritual. So I would explain it that way. It's like, if you're dealing with a challenge, whatever it is, like who's not dealing with some kind of challenge in their life, like something, it could be anything. It always has, I believe, a root in that first energy place.
Yeah.
So that's
what, you know, I think that might be hard for some people to hear, because it almost, you know, like if I wasn't, I would say, well, it almost brings it to a personal thing. Like I've flawed if I can't, you know, evolve, it's because, I don't know. I think that I totally agree. And, you know, and I think that people that I guess I'm thinking of like people that are dealing with like, okay, so you have a kid that's been born with these really challenging circumstances, but it's something that you can't like fix. But, you know, I think what I found too is just the insight that I got from just kind of letting go and opening to new perspectives and new ideas through a reading, or however people want to do it, tarot or astrology, helped me look at things differently and shift. I think that was a huge part of it. And I think that's what I would say to parents and people that are in these, you know, you get stuck down in a lot of like day-to-day stuff. You can't really, even when the medications and the therapies you're getting aren't working, you know, to try something different, something out of the box, something that you haven't explored before. And this was a perfect, the timing for me was really, really good. So I guess what I'm trying to say is don't be afraid of it to anybody listening. I had no idea that there was so much involved. So yeah, do you handle bias or stigma from like, can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like a term I've heard thrown around is like witch, which is funny to me.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Like, do people?
It's funny. I mean, I don't know. I mean, everyone has their own set of filters on this stuff,
right?
And that's okay. And when it comes to religion, like I just want to speak to that because I'm not I'm not an overly religious person, but I have a very strong connection to, like, for example, the Christ consciousness. And even Jesus, like the being himself, like especially lately, just funny enough, like the past couple months, just so strong in my life. Like just really, not Christianity itself, because I kind of separate the two. Whereas like, I don't know, just for me, like I look at him and his life and his teachings just purely, and I'm like, wow, like that was an example of how we can live, of divine just truth and love, and so that is 100% wrapped into my work as well. But you know, and I don't know if this offends people, and that's okay, but like so is Buddha and Buddhism, and so is Krishna, because I find that all have you know, they're all kind of pointing to the same truths. So I don't like to get too attached to that, any kind of religion or one way, because they're all like, it's all part of a greater whole. So but it's definitely, they're all like, all of that energy is present, and then so much more. Yeah.
Wow, that was really a beautiful explanation. And I hear you. I think there was this comment on LinkedIn about, it was just a very divisive comment about religion. And it was interesting to watch people's comments, you know, to see a lot of people with what's going on with COVID are really, you know, kind of bearing down on their religion and the dogma and the doctrine and holding on to that. And, you know, I think that's one thing that was an important step, is just letting go of that idea that there's one way to the top of the mountain. And and there's just so many ways, and we're all so different, and we've had different, you know, genetics, different circumstances.
Yeah. And we're so unique. Like what works for one person won't necessarily work for another.
Right. Do people bring like really high expectations into the work that they ask you to do? Sometimes, like, you know, I can see if I like, can you tell me if my dead uncle did, that kind of thing?
Oh man.
Or just not able, or have you had situations where like, you're channeling or you're not able to get, and I'm not trying to make you talk about bad things. I'm just trying to understand this.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to me, but, cause I bet there's people, I feel like you're a type, you're working at a level where people are going to find you when the timing's right. So you're probably not going to deal with a lot of people that are walking in off the street and, are doing this work. So
yeah, I mean, expectations, are there to varying degrees. For some reason, like I have received a few things, but I wouldn't really consider myself a medium in terms of like communicating with the other side, like the dead. That just doesn't seem to be a natural thing for me. It has happened a few times where I've like tuned into someone's grandmother, like it's happened. But yeah, I mean, I try to kind of like explain that too. Like, talk to them, like just to keep really open, like while I'm doing the session, often they're just in a meditative state. And I just say, your only job right now is to remain as open as possible. Just totally like if thoughts come, that's okay. Let them come and go. Emotions, whatever, but just try to stay, awake, aware, and just open. And that's kind of like my motto with this work, because that's how the most poignant information can really come through for someone.
And and you would then have to prepare yourself as well, I would guess, to be in a state where you're ready to receive that. And have you ever had a time where it just wasn't happening, or
no, it's weird.
You haven't.
Like, no, it's just
that's cool. That's cool.
I know.
That's just
no,
really great.
No, believe me, at the beginning I had a lot of doubts. Like, did
you? I guess that's what I'm looking at.
No, I mean fully. I mean, it's like whenever I think anyone steps into this work, because I really think that everybody has these abilities. Like,
I hear you. I do. I think we're blocked, or we're like,
and it's like maybe different. It's all again unique according to like your passions, your angle on reality, and like what you're interested in. But in terms of getting higher information, like we all have totally equal amount of that. But in terms of like at the beginning, it's like almost like, who am I to say I can do all this? And like there's so much doubt of conditioning and ego that's in the way of it. Somehow that didn't, I don't know how, but I think the divine energy is so strong that it did not like prevent me from receiving or doing the work. But it's really just with anything, like it gets easier and better with time as you get into it, and you just get more confident. You learn to just trust. And I think I'm grateful because I've always had that trust in what I'm receiving. I just, and I get the validation, and like, I feel blessed that I've always received validation from the other person. Yeah, this is right on, like I haven't really received any like, oh, that doesn't quite, I mean, I don't know, maybe I will, but as far as now, I
don't chase it.
No.
Yeah. So I was thinking, could you talk a little bit more about the Kundalini Awakening and just like what that means and how, I guess my thought was, how did you get like your personal life and how did you get through that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is a big one, because I just want to say, like, I the more I reflect on it, I feel like it's actually a big part of my life's work to help people with this, because I think that it does happen spontaneously. And it's, I didn't have at first very much help. Thank God I had the internet.
Right. So you knew that you had this, you kind of had some background.
Yeah, I did not know actually at the time what it was. I'm trying to remember when I realized, I think it was only a couple years ago I realized like, oh, that was, so I'll give you some backstory. Like I went through, have you heard of the term like dark night of the soul?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Essentially what I went through. So break up with a boyfriend, all these different things happening all at once, a really intense depression setting in. Mm-hmm. End of 2012, early 2013. It got to the point where I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. It was really bad. And it just kind of culminated. It all really took place in one night. One night I went out to eat with my mom. She knew something was up, trying to help me to eat. I couldn't eat and went home. and basically sobbed for probably 3-4 hours straight. I mean, just like sobbing in my room alone and just like, what is this? Why do I feel like that? I didn't know really. And what I ended up doing was writing. I started to realize like, oh, I'm going to journal because I need to express these feelings somehow. So I started to write just my emotions, everything that was coming up. And I remember there was a point in that writing where the energy shifted pretty significantly. And honestly, if I think back to it, that's really probably when the channeling started for me at that moment.
Okay.
Because it turned out, it went from me writing about my emotions and like trying to just express what I was feeling to basically I felt like I was channeling or even just writing directly to God or source, however you look at that, the higher power.
Sure.
Or like vice versa. It was almost like I was writing to that and it was writing to me or through me.
Wow.
Because it went from like, I was trying to get clarity, like what's going on. And then I was just, my pen started going by itself.
Oh my goodness.
It was like these profound messages about like psychologically what was happening. You're transmuting your shadow.
Wow.
Yeah, like alchemy and like mirror. Like it was all about mirroring and understanding how life is a mirror, and it's all reflecting your inner state. And it was like this was all brand new in terms of like I had never experienced that. And yeah, so like I started to receive these messages. And basically what happened that night was, again, it's always the upper left corner. I don't know what that is, but upper left corner, I heard and I felt, and I even saw like with my like third eye vision, angels' wings.
Really?
Fluttering. Like they were these big, beautiful, almost like a silvery gray tan color. And I could see them like without seeing them. It's really hard to explain, but.
No, I understand.
You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, I heard like, it was like, they were like fluttering.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, there's literally an angel. And it just like, it was just too real. And I knew I wasn't making it up. I knew that I've experienced, you know, consciously trying to think about things. And this was just outside. And so that, and then it just kind of got to that moment where like it broke. My dark night, my depression, it just like something just snapped. And I think honestly, like I think I came to terms with my ego to a degree, not fully, because I'm still working on that, but like I think it was the first time it was brought up to my awareness. And I was able to see it for what sense. I was able to see it for what it was. And I was like, oh, that's not me. You know, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my self-image. I'm not any of that. And then I would say that night was the first and day, because I didn't sleep, you know, I was up.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I was just up. And the first time I ever experienced like true presence. And I just remember the feeling of like freedom, you know, and inner just power, but like, it wasn't like it was like divine power. It was like joy and like clarity and like, whoa, this exists? Like, what is this? You know, it was unbelievable. And still to this day, like I've never, by the way, like never been able to get back to that. That was the peak of my life so far. In terms of my awareness and my emotions, I felt like invincible, totally invincible. And that bliss feeling lasted, I would say, about a week, honestly. Wow. Yeah, it was like a week. Maybe not as intense as those first few moments.
Right.
But yeah, it was a week. But then, you know, you can't sustain that if you're not prepared.
Yeah.
And right. I hadn't been meditating. I didn't know what was happening to me. And ultimately I kind of destabilized after that, because that
would be hard.
Yeah. I was like living on light, really. I had so much light in my cells, but again, I wasn't really eating or sleeping. So that was irregular. I wasn't really I didn't know about being grounded. So yeah, I had some really, so this is probably going to be interesting for you. The way I explain it to people when I hit the negative part, was basically like every subconscious fear I had was like becoming a reality in a sense, not necessarily externally, but in my experience, my consciousness. So like, I think I experienced a taste of like every possible mental disorder or condition.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, like I experienced OCD, and I've never had any of this. So I was very just easy mostly, but like also kind of asleep. But I experienced OCD. Like I started to scrub my bathtub.
Now, was this what was the time frame? Was this in that same period, or was it
Yeah.
like, okay,
that year? So it maybe a few weeks later.
Over the course of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over the course of like 6 months.
How interesting.
Yeah. I went through just like, wow, like I have to clean every single thing. Like I was like afraid of germs or something, or I was coming to terms with that part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had all these fears that I was going to be assassinated.
Really?
Yeah. Like someone was going to shoot me in the back of the head. Like really powerful fears that like that was going to happen like any moment. Very scary. Then I had fears that like, I couldn't breathe, or like, I don't know, literally everything in the book. I would say manic, depressive, bipolar. Not that like anyone would say, oh, you wasn't diagnosed that way. Right. But I've researched because I was like, what am I experiencing? And then I would research and like, oh my God, like every symptom, like that's what it was. But it was like a little period of time. And then I would go to the next one.
So like these things were like being brought to your awareness so you could kind of face them.
Exactly. They were all like repressed. They were subconscious. They were probably like shoved deep down, that like parts of me that I was unable to look at or even acknowledge before. But I also feel the other side of this is that I received that a lot of this happened to me so that I could fulfill my purpose of healing. Mm-hmm. And if I had never experienced what it's like to have a little bit of that, I could never help someone who was in that. You know what I mean? Like I could never be of service if I hadn't experienced a little taste of it myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the people that are most effective sometimes are the ones that have walked through those, having those and coming through the other side. So really fascinating though.
Yeah, it was really intense. Yeah. I mean, I somehow navigated it. Definitely called like 911 a few times.
Did you really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
And I have no problem sharing this because I feel like it helps people understand.
It does. You're helping me. I had like I said, out of body experience, and so much of what you're describing now, this was induced with, I was on a bunch of medications and I started using cannabis. I didn't know much about it. So I was just like dumping it in on top of all these other, so I was getting myself in a state where I was like kind of disassociating. And then during this one period, there was like, I remember it distinctly where I was out of my body and like these, I was having these like visions, or I couldn't control what I was doing and saying. And there was a lot of really dark stuff. And I think looking back, it had to come out. Like I had repressed a lot of stuff. And I feel like for me, cannabis was like the key that kind of unlocked all that and allowed me to like see, what was happening and, what I needed to change, one of these steps. So I do understand to a degree, but not completely. And that's really kind of a remarkable experience you've been through.
Yeah. I mean, I've never had out of body, so I don't understand what that is like. So like, it's just, I've always been interested. I've never experienced that. I would say the most I've had is like in a dream. I kind of like astral projected, but I'm still in my dream.
Yeah, that's a whole thing, is the lucid dreaming. And that was really interesting. I'm going to say, for COVID, what are your thoughts on what it's, theoretically in society? How have you been affected? Do you have any thoughts on like what's happening? For me, it hasn't been that bad. I'll just share this just because I work from home, and I feel like I am fairly tuned in to, I'm not really caught up with a bunch of rules and regulations and ways of thinking. So it's easy to like put it in perspective in terms of it's like a needed change for our whole country and our whole world, but it's hard, I'd say there's really a lot of pieces that are hard, and it's hard to see people getting so just angry and bitter and so.
Yeah. I mean, I've always kind of, again, like similar to you, like feel like there's a much higher reason that these things take place. So I haven't let myself, like, I think because I have that really strong connection, that trust, that I haven't let myself get really into the fear, which I think is important. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been hard. I've definitely been somewhat affected. I think everyone has to a degree. It's weird, but I'm 100% trusting. And like, I don't know how, you know, I've been through a lot, but I'm always like an eternal optimist no matter what. And I thank God for that too, because I just feel like I can always see the positive of it. And even though it is very horrible, and I don't minimize the negative because it's there,
that way.
It's like, I don't know, like a big part of me feels that a big reason for it is our planet, honestly. I don't know. I feel Mother Earth. I feel that connection to her. And when I started to hear that, like, you know, in China and LA, that like they could see the sky for the first time because the factories were closed down, and like everyone's getting kind of outside and there's less pollution, and you could feel our planet healing.
Definitely.
And I think if we really take a step back and look at the big picture, we are kind of very small compared to the planet. Or it's like we have a big planet and we're just kind of like living on it. So that's a priority. And so I'm just happy. Like, I've always gone outside. I'm a huge nature person. Like, I go on hikes. So just to kind of see more people, because that's really all you have to turn.
It is. I know. I loved that. Like seeing people outside, and I feel called to be in the woods or to get outside. I mean, I feel like if I don't do it, I'm missing something, and I get kind of OCD about it.
Oh my God. Yes. I mean, that's how we heal. It's just like everything's out there for us. So yeah, I totally agree. So that's like my biggest thing is I feel so connected to the planet now more than ever. And I think that it's really awakening everyone else to that importance. So
yeah, it's like this, I see this push-pull thing. Like, it's almost like we're looking at what we did to ourselves. And some people are really resisting that knowledge. And, you know, we want to put a external fix on it. And I'm not going to talk about this too much, but like, you know, the vaccine is going to save us, you know, like something external is going to save us. And this fear mindset, that really, really really is upsetting to me. But I won't, like you, I just refuse to go down that road, you know.
Yep, exactly.
It is scary, you know, when I see people losing jobs, and that, like, when it starts to hit home for me, you know, I've had to really do a lot with my, get involved with my son and his, some of his learning issues. Then I'm like, but, you know, I think that's part of it. You know, we're trying to put it in perspective, and why is this happening, and what can I learn?
Always. Yeah. It's all within us. So we have everything we need.
Yeah. I right there with you. How do you see this type of practice? Do you see it becoming more mainstream?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I think this is just the beginning. I mean, a lot of people in the circles that I kind of keep tabs on are calling 2020 the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening. You know, I just received a channeling earlier about the state of things, actually, and they were like, it's the Great Awakening and it's the year of transformation. And yeah, I mean, I think that this is just the beginning, and that more and more people are going to start to realize that the old paradigm is not able to support who we're becoming.
Ooh, that's good.
You know, it's just like we're
old paradigm.
Into these unlimited multidimensional selves with like incredible gifts and talents in so many areas that, to me, it's even silly to be like, that's circling back to the whole, like, what do you call yourself?
Right.
One career now seems kind of silly to me. Like, oh, this is what I do. Just this. Just this one thing. It's like, no, like we're all meant to, I do believe we're just so divine. Like, we're meant to have so many different like
experiences and
career, or like ways that we help or contribute. It's like, yeah, I do a little of this, a little of that. It's like really turning our passions into, you know, how we serve, and getting away from the materialistic mindset. I think that's really coming into play now too. It's like, you want to be able to cover your survival and your expenses. Right, but after that, like, money is not important. It's just not. And I think more and more people are realizing that. It's like, okay, what really matters is it's how you contribute, and it's how you make a difference in someone's life and create value and share with others and connect. And so, yeah, I really hope that we're going to start to see these new, and I already see it, you know, conscious.
That's good.
Yeah, a little bit. It's still in the fringes, you know, but and I still feel like a lot of it is almost like in the background, or like underground, you could call it. Like, it's just, it hasn't bubbled up to where people are seeing it outly. Yeah, but
It's kind of like,
yeah. But it's like, as like we're watching our whole world crumbling, you know, it's like on fire. Like obviously all this stuff can't sustain itself the way we've had it, that there are people who've been aware of this and they're like, okay, let's create these new systems that are very sustainable for the earth and about cooperation, and we can all collaborate and just find mutually beneficial solutions. I think that's what it's about. Yeah,
I totally agree. You know, I think that we're finding out too, there's a lot of variables at play between the people that want to have a more progressive and evolving agenda. Even within those, I've found, you know, like people get hung up on, and, you know, I do too, on like I mentioned the vaccine thing, you know, I'm seeing like people from all ends of the political spectrum, you know, coming out either really in support or against, you know, that wouldn't necessarily be on the same quote unquote same team. So I'm seeing this, like, it's like I'm like, wow, you know, you're holding on to this concept, and like it's bending back around politically, where like the right is the left and the left is the right.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I did. I noticed that too. Yeah. And again, like I've noticed a pattern for myself too with all of this stuff. Like even probably every person when COVID first hit was a little bit afraid. And I would be lying if I got out of that. But for like the first few weeks, I was like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? Totally. And then the same thing with the vaccines. Like when I first found out about that, I was very like against it. And I still am. Yeah. But I think the fear factor is like, it's like that charge at first. But then I start to dig into it and I'm like, you know what? We're evolving into light bodies. Like we're evolving into higher beings capable of, so it's like, you almost have to have that mentality of no matter what you do to me, I'm going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's it's an expansive way to look at it, but it's totally bypassing fear, because you're like, you know what? If you want to stick a vaccine in my arm, I'm still going to evolve the way I'm meant to, no matter what. I don't want it, but you can't touch my true self. You know what I mean? Like I think that's the mentality we have to have.
I agree. I think that in some ways there's just not going to be any peace for a lot of people until there is something external like that. And how much can you fight something that, you know, I probably a bit of rot in hell for saying this, but I mean, you can't fight on every front. And, you know, like, at what point are you being unrealistic in your, you know, resistance? And so it's complicated, you know, and I think having kids that, you know, a vaccine could impact them negatively. I'm like really walking a thin line, but I totally hear you. Like, I mean, what are you supposed to do? I mean, we can't decide that if we have to get a vaccine, that's the end of our, you know, our journey, you know, because we've had this vaccine. We've got to move forward and just accept.
Yeah,
it's complicated. Tell me a little bit about where people can find you and what you offer. Yeah.
So I have a website. It's quantum-freedom.com. So right now I have my services on there. If you want to purchase my books, I have 2 right now, many more to come. And the books are also on Amazon and Barnes & Noble as well. I do have an Instagram. It's quantum_freedom. So you can find me on there. And I have a lot. I'll just put it this way, like a lot in the works. So speaking of podcasts, I just spoke to my friend. We're starting a podcast together.
That's awesome.
So me, my friend Deanna, and it's going to be like and I would love to have you on one.
I can't wait.
I would love that. That would be so amazing. Because I think podcasts are so valuable for so many people. So that's definitely something to look out for. So
that's great. Well. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this.
You too.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. That is a wrap. Thank you so much, Katy. Wasn't she awesome? You can find her at www.quantum-freedom.com. Again, tune in for our TSC Talks weekly updates every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on our TSC Talks Facebook page, and those are live. And stay tuned for more awesome, interesting, unique, challenging content. Raining down love and positivity. Over and out.